Folks, good afternoon. I'm Dustin Siggins with Proven Media Solutions. Today on Cracking the Comms Code, we're going to tackle how to make a pitch that actually lands with a journalist. Earlier this year, I noticed a pattern of journalists putting out whole documents saying, this is what I cover and this is what I don't. And that showed that the evil of spray and pray was still in existence. And so today we have Quin Hillyer, a former Washington Examiner columnist, currently a columnist with NOLA and some of the other media outlets in Louisiana. Anastassia is a senior writer for Fierce Healthcare with a focus on health equity and investigative reporting. And Bolton with GoBankingRates, which is a public-facing personal finance media outlet. Before we dive in, don't forget to bring your questions and insights and experiences into the comments. We want to have a really engaging conversation because the goal here is to help reporters get better pitches and help PR people serve our clients and management and principals better. So Quin, Anastassia, Kara, please go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Sure. I guess I can take it. I'm Anastassia. I'm a reporter at Fierce Healthcare. I'm a senior writer, so I focus more on longer form reporting, and I do cover health equity, which is broad and keeps things interesting.
I bet.
Kara, go ahead.
I'm Kara Bolton. I'm an independent journalist, and I work with GoBankingRates covering consumer finance from a personal point of view. So I do a lot of how is this going to affect your wallet kind of stories and pop culture economics, which is super fun.
Quin Hillyer. I've been a journalist for 45 years, and I am generally thought of as a conservative columnist on politics and culture, and also an editor and a member of the editorial board of the Louisiana newspapers right now, although I've written for just about every publication in the country at various times.
That is true. So let's start with, it's easy on LinkedIn. It's easy when I'm 40. So it's easy to look and say, look what's happening now. What I would love to get, Quin, is your perspective as someone who's been in this long before the internet was a player in the media space. And Kara, you've been on the PR communications professional side of the table. I would love to hear both of your perspectives on how have things changed about how you are pitched or how you have pitched in the past compared to what is experienced now.
I don't know that much has changed. You've got, other than that you have more different methods of being contacted. There's so many more platforms. There's so many, social media has meant that rather than getting everything from basically either a phone call or a letter in the mail, and then early on, maybe through email. Now you're getting it through email. You're getting it, through basically every communication way that there is. But what that also means is with so much out there, so many different means of getting to you, I get a lot more things that I would consider spam pitches. I mean, they're not really spam. They're supposed professionals reaching out to you, but they're worthless because it's just so easy for them to push one button and hit 50,000 journalists out there. And so I've got to continually wade through my inbox and get rid of them.
So before I went independent, I was actually an award-winning journalist for almost a decade, and politics was my main forum. That was my beat. And then I worked for a political party for a little while, and then I went independent into PR, then went back into journalism. So I wanted to just share what my perspective is. I think that when I was a beat reporter in the late 90s, early 2000s, it was easy to meet people locally at the local coffee shop, right? Like I knew where people went to have their morning coffee, have their evening drink, where they went to dinner. And because we're so removed from the communities that we report on in some cases, especially in my case, it's hard to develop one-on-one relationships with PR professionals so that you can tell them, oh, I have this coming up. or if you have editorial changes happening because of the company that you work for, it was easier to be able to explain them. Now it's very different. I mean, Dustin, you and I've worked together over the past year, so we've been able to develop a good working relationship, and I think that's the hardest thing for both PR people and reporters today.
Yeah, I would say from my point of view, I mean, I've obviously been in this field just over the past, 5 odd years, and it's all about online. I work from home. We are scattered all over the country. Our team is, and even though I live in New York, and it's relatively easy to meet PR professionals that are there or coming through the city, which is pretty frequent. I would say more than ever, pray and spray does not work. I think back in the day, things were maybe a little more tailored, a little less competitive. Newsrooms were better resourced. We are not in that era anymore. Resources are ever shrinking. Newsrooms are super strained. And, as someone that works with a very, very small team, personal relationships are more important than ever, yes. And we just are not in an era where sending a pitch out to 100 reporters and hoping that it sticks is really feasible or practical. I think tailored pitches are more important than ever because, especially in my field, and my beat in healthcare, there are so many pitches every single day, and we are being more and more selective, and just customizing the pitch and making sure that it's truly newsy and valuable is more important than ever.
Oh, and I
So,
just want to jump in. Oh, can I just jump into with something that Anastasia said? Yes, because like gone are the days, and Quinn might be able to relate, where people actually sat down and read what we said in a newspaper. Like we are competing against Reels and TikTok Reels, YouTube. We're competing against so much more for people's attention. So the pitch needs to be targeted and focused, and it needs to be sharp because that helps us write a better article that's going to get the attention of the reader. A lot of times, PR professionals, myself included, thought that the end game was getting your client's name in whatever publication you were targeting. No, the end game is to get what your client said read by as many people as possible. And so that's the end game. So if you think about that when you're sending the pitch, that helps you down the line.
Well, let me say this. There are there's not always a problem with uh non-entirely targeted pitches. It just depends on what audience you're going for. If I'm writing, which I am now back for a Louisiana paper, when there is a PR person that generally handles a lot of political and culture stuff in Louisiana, is well known, uh, and sends out a pitch to all her Louisiana contacts, knowing that, not everyone is going to be interested in that particular pitch, but that at least it's Louisiana centric. It's uh, it, she's well known, and therefore that it's not going to be a bother. It's not way out of bounds. Uh, Whereas if you've got somebody in Seattle sending something to me in Louisiana and pretending that it's personalized, hey, Quinn, are you interested? And then it's some sort of, I'm writing politics and it's some sort of high tech thing out in Seattle, and they pretend that it's personalized, but obviously it's just some sort of machine that has taken my first name and said, put Quinn in it. Uh, but the rest of it has nothing to do with anything I would ever look at. That's when it's annoying. That's when it is counterproductive, because if I get two or three things from that person, then I am gonna automatically block that person. And if they actually have something down the line that might be of interest to me, I won't even see it because it's blocked. Does that distinction make sense?
well, that's kind of how our relationship has been built, Quinn, over the last 5 years. I've probably pitched you 50 stories or 80, maybe 30 stories in the last 5 years when you're the examiner and now when you're the advocate at NOLA, you've probably said yes 6 times out of those, 30 to 50 to covering even considering the topic beyond a quick email or phone call. But you've never said this is so far out of bounds, Dustin, leave me alone. In fact, when I've said, I'm sorry, it's a bad pitch, you've said it's not a bad pitch. It's just not exactly right for what I'm covering.
Yeah,
And I
but
think
see,
that
you're
happens
at
since we've all
least
talked about it.
literally trying to meet me where I am and putting some thought into it. That's never a problem. What's a problem is somebody that I don't know
Mhm.
and clearly has no idea who I am, trying to make a personalized pitch or something appear to be personalized when I know that 5,000 other people are getting it. Uh, that's what gets annoying. I don't mind somebody who's actually putting some thought into what they're doing and saying, look, is this in your space? And if not, I'll go away. That's perfectly fine. What's not fine is the mass pitch that doesn't have anything to do with what I'm doing.
So Anastasia, you and I met on LinkedIn earlier this year, and just so everyone's aware, I've had conversations with all these three people on different topics. Quinn and I have worked on several different topics over the years with different clients. Kara actually has quoted me on a couple of her business articles, as well as my father, actually. We did an interview with her. But also, she quoted one of our business clients, and Anastasia and I met through LinkedIn. We saw that she covered health equity, and she and I did a sit down probably 6 weeks ago or so. The way I did a really narrow pitch, probably is a half a page, the whole pitch to make sure we got the details right. So I'd love to, Anastasia, to talk through, when you get that kind of pitch where you only knew me through LinkedIn, it was very obvious that we connected on LinkedIn for like a week, and then I pitched you. I'd be interested in your reaction to that. Is that seen as opportunism? Is that seen as, well, it's opportunistic, but he's a PR guy, he has to be. Let's see what he actually says. I'd love to get your reaction to what initially happened with our conversation and how that can be sort of zoomed out for the wider PR world.
Yeah, I don't see it as problematic at all. I mean, LinkedIn is a professional networking platform. I know that. I'm on there for that reason. And people reach out to me all the time, and they typically DM me and they say either, how do you like to be pitched? And I say, please send it to my email, and flag it for me because we have an annoying firewall. Or, sometimes they'll send like a super informal pitch on LinkedIn, which I don't prefer, but sometimes it just organically leads to a broader conversation, and it's fine. And I think what you did is really great in that you were like, I want to get to know you better. Can we get on a call really quick? And I want to hear about your beat. And it was just to get to know you. And that's so nice because then I can be really specific of what I'm looking for, what I'm not looking for. You put a face to the name, and I'm much more likely to spot your pitch in my inbox and just know that you understand what I'm covering. As a senior writer, especially, it's rare for me to read cold pitches, honestly. I have working relationships with a handful of publicists that I trust that know my beat, that almost always pitch me something very tailored that I know is gonna be a good story. And so the best way, honestly, to pitch me is to like reach out and try to get to know me. And that way we can have a better working relationship. If you're cold pitching me, chances are I'm not reading it. Cold pitches are usually not great. And to Quin's point, they are very clearly being sent to a mass amount of reporters. They're very, very rarely personalized if it's a cold pitch.
One of the things that, Kara, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I mean, because of what I do, I have to use a platform like Quoted a lot. And one of my issues, I don't mind being cold pitched, but what I do mind is when I'm very specific about what it is that I need and someone responds with something that I don't need, and I appreciate that people want to take the time to both vet me as they should, by offering to do an interview with their client, but I don't really have the time. I have to turn around things very quickly. So I don't have the time to go back and forth with scheduling emails. Like I provide the questions that I need answers to. And I really want people to understand, like PR people to understand, like the best way to, when they're doing cold pitches in a platform like Quoted, is to just do what the what the reporter asked for. Like, don't add any extra things thinking that that's going to help. And don't contact me outside of Quoted because your email will get lost. And so if you've taken, hours of time to put together your client response and then it's not included, it's because it got lost in my email and I don't have the time to comb through my email and find the responses. Like it's very quick turnaround. So I feel like I lost the thread here, but as we were talking about, just cold pitches, I welcome cold pitches. I just want people to, if I'm on a platform like Quoted or Harrow, to just answer the questions that I've asked. And if their client is not a good fit, don't like do a spray and pray or a Hail Mary hoping that I'll just allow it anyway. I never will. If your client is not a good fit, I will not use them.
Let me jump in and say that part of what makes a successful pitch, if you're going to do a sort of a semi-mass pitch, where, you've got a list that, people that might be interested, you don't know them, but, but it's not out of bounds to be sending, to 200 people who are all in, genuinely interested in this kind of topic area or whatever, but you don't know them each in individually. Uh, but you might get some responses from people you've never dealt with before. I'm talking you as the PR person. Then I, as a journalist, I see something and it does catch my eye, and I follow up and I say, "Oh, well, can you send me some more really concise examples of what you're talking about?" And then I find out they're not prepared. In other words, they've sent this whole thing out, but they don't actually have ready at hand uh, something to follow up with the next step. So if you're making a pitch, you should have ready at hand uh, sort of a bullet point list or a short, concise, well organized one pager that you can follow up with for preliminary, oh, I might be interested kinds of things. And you should have available links or some other more detailed thing for if they then follow up on that. Don't just send something out mass and then when they start asking you questions, say, "Oh, let me go research that and I'll get back to you in 3 days." You should have something ready to do the quick follow-up so you haven't just floated the bait in front. You've got something to hook me with. Uh it's really annoying if I've taken the time out of my busy day to say, well, maybe I'll give this guy a chance. And so I say, tell me a little bit more. And you're like, oh, you need 5 short points on that here. Let me go check with my supervisor. No, it doesn't work like that. I mean, it, if I'm going to answer with a mild bit of interest, you should have the next step ready.
I want to add to that because it's a lot of journalists make that similar complaint, Quinn, on LinkedIn, and it's become a whole conversation where a lot of PR people think the journalist is being arrogant or the journalist is saying I'm more important. My view is, to Anastassia's point, and I just looked it up while we were all talking. Anastasia, some weeks you do 2 stories, some weeks you do one, right? Carrie, you're doing a couple stories a day, I believe. Quinn does 2 columns, 2 or 3 columns a week. Every reporter has different deadlines and different timelines. And Anastasia might only do one story a week, but it's a deep, deep dive. This is a lot of research, a lot of interviews. So I want to go back to a principle we use at my company, which is, yes, we want our clients to pay us. We want to serve our clients, but we also want to make sure the journalist has a job at the end of the week. If we can give a story to a journalist and with all the details, Quinn, that you're talking about, we now save the journalist time. We save them energy. They don't have to go through as much editing because their editor is going to say yes to that story more quickly. And they don't have to call everybody. We did a story for, it was an AI client a couple of years ago. They did a study. They weren't a political organization, but the best chance of coverage was in Fox Business. We then took that story, pitched it to Fox Business, and found three independent voices, two that were more slightly politically conservative, one that was more liberal, provided those outside interviews opportunities to the reporter, and all three were included because we understood what the outlet was looking for and what the client wanted to see in the final article. And it ended up working out really well. And I think, the Quinn, that's what you're talking about, is that level of two or three steps down the line of towards getting something published.
Yeah, I mean, look, if it's not saying I'm more important than you, it's that I am literally getting 300 emails a day.
Mm-hmm.
And if I've taken one of them from somebody I don't know
Mm-hmm.
and said, I'll give this a chance
Yep.
after wading through 299 others, at the very least, I want somebody to be professional enough to be prepared for my question. I'm not talking about being prepared for every eventuality, but you know, you're sending out a 3 paragraph email,
Mm-hmm.
e- an email pitch, and then somebody says, I'm interested in this. Can you give me, like 5 good points about this? And you say, oh, well, I'm not really sure I know that much about it. Let me go find out for you. You're supposed to know what you're pitching, and you're supposed to be able to lead me to the next step. And that's not me saying I'm more important. It's I've got 300 other things to wade through as well. Whereas supposedly you're being paid specifically to sell this particular topic.
I hadn't thought of it quite that way, but you're right. I'm supposed to send one email that works. You're wading through 300 emails and seeing which ones work. I hadn't thought of it, that delineation. That's great. The contrast.
So when I was on the PR side of it, I did political PR, and I actually hate pitching and placement. So when I do independent PR work for people, I refuse to do pitching and placement because I hate it that much.
Me
But
too.
I really do. So God bless the PR people who are on here. But for me, like, part of it was just doing that detailed research. So if I am pitching somebody on an education topic, I'm looking at test scores in that reporter's
Right.
coverage area so that it's super targeted. So I'm like, these are the test scores in your area. This is what my client is saying, how they can help improve test scores for parents. So also sort of using that audience language for the reporter. So it's not just for them, but it's also talking to their reader through them, if that makes any sense.
100%. I always say, like, please cite data in your pitch and please link to it. Like, it saves us an enormous amount of time because if you put some random stats in a pitch about some healthcare issue, I still need to go and double check. Like, I need to fact check that. I need to go research it. And it saves so much time if you just hyperlink and link or cite a study or, whatever it is. That's so helpful.
Um, I had something in the back of my head and I forgot it. I just lost to quote Kara, I've lost the thread. I would be very interested, you mentioned Anastasia relationships. I'm writing an essay actually this afternoon from my point of view, not a client's point of view, on the impact of relationships in PR. And for years, and literally until this past summer, I was an advocate that relationships don't matter. What matters is the subject line to get you to open the email. What matters is the content of the pitch, etc. But this is the second panel in the last 2 weeks that's been reporter driven. Everyone has talked about relationships. Quinn included a spokesperson from one of our client campaigns in his story this week. not because I pitched him, but because I've pitched him in the past. He trusts that I'll have somebody. And if I say no, he knows I don't. If I say yes, he knows I can deliver on his deadline. So this piece is actually going to be a little more reflective for me because there were so many PR firms when I was prospecting in the non-com space who said, well, what relationships do you have in my industry? I don't know. This PR isn't about relationships. It's about the storytelling and grabbing the data and the
It's
compelling
about
narrative.
both.
But it's both. And I thought the relationship was like 10%. But to Anastasia, to your point, when there's 300 emails, one of the reporters who was on a couple weeks ago, Joanna with Nation's Restaurant News said, look, I'm really paying most attention to about 8 people. That's it. Of my 100 emails I get, about 6 or 8 are the ones I'm looking for, unless there's something unusual going on. So I'd love for everyone to kind of talk about relationships here because I think it is abused in the PR space. We have relationships in this industry, but I'm actually realizing I was kind of wrong to say it was only like 10% based on the reporter perspectives that I see and some experience with Quin like just this week.
I would agree with you back what you thought back then, that on the surface it seems like all that should matter is a pitch. I totally agree with that. I don't think a relationship is a prerequisite for a great pitch. Unfortunately, in this day and age, good pitches are really hard to come by. And if you have a relationship, I feel like the stakes are higher for the publicist. They better understand the reporter's, beat. So I think it's not necessary by any means. I welcome an amazing cold pitch, but it's really rare. And so if the relationship is what it takes to craft a good pitch, by all means, like, yes, the relationship is important. And I do enjoy meeting people in person and getting to know them, but that's not like a guarantee that I'm going to like all your pitches by any means. So the relationship is not everything, but it helps.
Yeah, well, look, if somebody has pitched you before and you've shown a little bit of interest, and then you say, no, this doesn't really work, and they're really good. Oh, I get it. It doesn't work because of X. Okay, I'll leave you alone. And they take a constructive no for an answer rather than keeping on pushing. And then they try again, and it's sort of the same thing. But in the course of doing that, I see, well, they're actually really trying to meet me where I am. And meanwhile, they're not a jerk when I end up saying no. Then I'm like, okay, they get it. If they pitch me something a third time, uh, I'm likely to listen because they've shown that even though the first two didn't take, they showed they understood why. And now the likelihood is that this pitch is going to be even more tailored to me. So that's what I mean about how a relationship can work over time. That's how it has worked with Dustin. Uh, so that, for instance, there's one topic he has been pushing for months. And I
Yeah.
kept saying, actually, I am interested in that, but A, it has to have a Louisiana angle, and B, it has to have a current news hook,
Right.
and uh, and this doesn't really work. I've got all this other stuff going on, but just keep it in mind. Well, lo and behold, a story broke this week that had to do with that topic. I then reached out to Dustin rather than vice versa and say, Dustin, you've been pushing this general subject area for the last 6 months, but I didn't have a news hook. Now I have a news hook. Please help me. And he was ready to go and it worked. But that's the kind of give and take that can happen, that can pay dividends 6 months down the line because you've been respectful and thoughtful.
Yeah, I want to touch on something that Quinn said because I was going to say it was really important, is it's never just the pitch, right? It's the relationship beyond the pitch. Great if you send me pitches that work, and great if you send me pitches that don't. But I'm more inclined to start thinking about your clients when I'm on deadline and writing a story. So Dustin has, I'm not sure if it's a client or a friend that he referred me to for a piece like a year and a half ago or a year ago. I still go to that person.
Really?
Yeah, I still go to Wayne all the time.
It's so fun.
So it's that relationship that goes beyond, like, if you've if you've pitched me, whether or not it's good or not, we have a decent relationship, I will automatically think about your clients when I get stories or story assignments that fit that particular area.
That's a good point. So the relationship is even beyond with the public relations professional. It's with our client. It's with that spokesperson.
Yes.
Yeah, a really good point. Um, so by the way, anyone who's watching, someone already commented, but we'd love to get your questions here. Anastassia is in healthcare, focused on health, investigative reporting and health equity. Kara is with GoBankingRates, where this it's would you say it was pop culture, personal finance?
Yes, that's what I call it,
Normal
pop
stuff.
culture, personal finance.
How things impact your wallet, your retirement, etc. And then Quin is a culture political columnist, focusing on Louisiana and Louisiana goings on. So if you have any questions for these folks, whether it's you want to talk about local media, industry, make sure you bring those questions in the comments. We'll be on for another 15 minutes or so.
I also co-host our podcast, Podnosis. If you have any pitching questions for the podcast, happy to answer those.
I forgot. But that does bring up another point. If we're pitching you, Anastassia, 2 weeks ago we had Ross Wilkers at Washington Technology. He's a reporter. He's also a podcast host. But his show doesn't air for like 5 weeks after you do the interview, after you sit down and you're on his show. So he pointed out, like, if you want to pitch me something breaking, that's an article pitch. If you want to pitch me something that's breaking, it's not good for the podcast. Anastassia, can you talk a little bit about the difference between pitching those two sort of platforms, if you will, those two mediums when reaching out to you?
Yeah, it's similar. We don't record live, and there is often a multi-week delay between when we record and when it's live. And I think for us, because we're a trade and we are a very daily news-driven written publication, the podcast gives us more flexibility to explore topics more in depth, more evergreen topics, or even topics that are a little bit more public health oriented. We write for we're trade publications, so we write for healthcare professionals. We don't write as much for the patient perspective, for the consumer perspective, but we have more of that flexibility on the podcast because we know we're reaching a wide audience on the pod, and we have room to explore topics that we wouldn't maybe explore in written form. So I always say for the podcast, it's best to pitch a pretty specific topic. Don't just go like, oh, AI in healthcare, AI in hospitals. Also, better to stay away from the really, really overdone topics like AI. But it's better to be specific. And if you have a specific guest in mind, maybe someone who's really compelling in audio form or just a great, someone who has a great point of view, please make sure you make it clear why they have a unique perspective and they want to speak on this particular topic. The more I can see that connection, the more compelling it is. And we have, execs on, we have clinicians on, we have researchers, attorneys. It's a huge mixed bag, and there is more flexibility with the podcast. And so if you ever pitch something that's for a written story, and I might say, hey, this might actually be better for the podcast, and vice versa.
And Quinn, how does writing a column differ for you than when you were at the American Spectator, or you were at other outlets that were maybe more article focused or more to that sort of traditional news medium versus a column where you're heavy on opinion, but you always have references to research, references to what's going on. You have an interview with sometimes 2-3 people. Can you delineate between those two in your experience, how they might relate to pitching or being pitched?
Well, if you're a good opinion journalist, you still start with the facts. And the pitch, in my mind, should always lead fact first. I wouldn't necessarily make that delineation in terms of the pitch between opinion and straight news. I've done a lot of both. But if you're pitching somebody that is generally on the right and your arguments are coming from the left, you're going to strike out. If your arguments are, okay, this might be a position that you might not ordinarily take if you're on the right, but here are some reasons why you might want to take this. In other words, even if you're arguing something thought of as somewhat to the left, make the pitch from center or center right. Why would a conservative want to take up the cause of somebody on death row if the conservative is, at least nominally in favor of capital punishment? Well, that's where the opinion comes in is, okay, if it's an opinion columnist, you sort of know where they're coming from. But you still have to say, these are the facts you should consider. This is what is going on. This guy has been on death row for 27 years, and they never actually had any evidence against him. Oh, well, didn't the trial show some evidence? And said no, it was based on 4 pieces of third-hand testimony. Oh, that's interesting. That's usually not enough to put somebody on death row. So what you're doing is you're finding the facts that are the most compelling, and you've got to pitch the facts that are most compelling, whether it's to an opinion guy or a straight news guy. The facts still lead.
Anastasia, you're in a very busy space that has a lot of controversy. And the misinformation argument of the last decade, I mean, healthcare has always been so controversial, especially at the policy level. But we're also seeing the FDA, what was it, the red dye? The FDA has said the red dye needs to be gone by 2027. Some organizations have been pushing that for 2.5 decades. That was a hugely controversial thing. What is it? What is the cereal? There's no red dye allowed in Europe. It's like the Fruit Loops, I think, looks different in Europe than the US because they don't allow red dye. Um, how do you think through facts? You mentioned having links so you can do research. If someone was to pitch you from you cover health equity, from the position that would be, let's say, counter to the normal health equity conversation, how seriously would you take that if they provided the evidence to show that the normal point of view may not be as a slam dunk facts as you would have thought? How could someone pitch you in that way? And I'm picking health equity because that's one of the areas you cover, and it touches on the political angle that Quin was referencing as well.
Yeah, well, it depends. Like if it's a scientific lens, I would have to do my due diligence, make sure that the study is credible and the researchers are credible. And I don't cover studies that often. We just, we cite general reputable stats on diseases, on, treatment. We're lucky that we're in a very scientific space. So generally speaking, like a fact is a fact. New evidence comes up, but again, I don't cover studies that often. If you were to pitch me something that's more of like a political or corporate lens when it comes to health equity, I mean, I would be open to that conversation. But if it's going against the grain of accepted fact, scientific fact, then it's not going to be a story. And luckily our readers, when it comes to misinformation, we obviously we call out misinformation, we correct misinformation in our stories, but our readers are not disagreeing with us on that because we write for an audience, like I said, of healthcare professionals, clinicians, people who understand science and reason. And so we don't get pushback from readers on that. And we generally have a very educated audience as it is.
And Kara, your audience is much more the average person, right? So I don't want to say less educated in a pejorative sense, but they're not experts on personal finance. They're not accountants, right? But am I correct about your audience then?
Right.
And so where is the line where someone is, too technical, right? Where Anastassia sounds like you can't be too technical in a lot of respects. With Quin, you can't be too zeroed in on Louisiana because that's the core part. But for you, I mean, I've sent you pitches where you said, no, that's too high level. It's too, say, business leader focused, not focused enough on the average person's ability to read it and make that applicable to their lives.
You said it, actually. I mean, so when I write anything, it's how can this person use this information and apply it to their lives? I'm not giving them financial or investment advice. I'm saying, here is a topic, here is how it could affect you. And always, make sure you check with a financial professional. So that's kind of how I keep it from being too technical, a space. And I want to talk about this because I really am enjoying writing in this space, and I would be open to pitches in this space. So we've been doing a lot of like pop culture economics. So it started with me for a story of like, what would the retirement for the Avengers look like if they had like led normal lives? And I loved that story. And then it was followed up by like, could the Golden Girls afford to retire in Miami in 2025?
So
Loved
fun.
that story. And then I was doing research for another story, and I came up with the idea like, could Homer Simpson support his family in 2025? Given his salary, could they live
Right.
in, a home, and like given all of Homer Simpson's accidents, and like what would the doctor's bills be like? And so I know it sounds silly. Like I know that I am not changing the world. I'm not moving a needle, but it's just fun sometimes. And I guess that's what I want to say is to have fun with the pitches. Like they don't always have to be so serious all the time, at least for the pop culture venue. So if you can send me something that's fun and interesting, I will definitely take a look at it.
To that point, by the way, you should look at Tim Allen and Home Improvement for medical bills and,
Oh,
homeowners insurance. That would be, I think, really interesting. And also, if you didn't watch it, there was the Hawkeye Christmas special. Not that I'm
yeah.
a
Yeah, I
not that I
remember
pay
that.
attention to Marvel or anything.
Yeah.
But they actually talked about his hearing issues and his trauma from all
Mm,
of this. That would have been really interesting. That's
yeah.
fascinating. So I promised you all we would keep this a little bit short of an hour. So I think we have time for everyone to kind of do one more riff. What haven't we tackled that a PR professional needs to know in order to pitch you, but also pitch, more broadly? What are the pain points that we haven't addressed yet that you as a journalist, whether as an editor, a host, a reporter, a columnist, are facing that a PR person should keep in mind?
I'm
I
going
would
to jump
say,
in and say something that I said earlier, which is take no for an answer.
mm,
If the journalist says no, then
Mhm.
say, okay, I'll get you next time. And don't keep pestering them and saying, well, come on, really? Uh-uh. Take no for an answer and you'll get some respect because it'll show that you were respecting the journalist's knowledge of what he needs to do. And it's a long game.
Mhm.
Your failure or what seems like a failure on one pitch
Mhm.
might lead, as we've said, to a success on another or a success on this pitch later if it comes back up again. So don't be afraid to take no for an answer.
yeah. Also, please only follow up once. That's my personal preference. Please don't follow up 5 times. Okay, like if you have a quota, sure, but it's just so annoying. I'm never going to respond to you, and I'm probably not going to look at your pitches in the future. So please only follow up once if you haven't heard from me. And I would say pitch stories, not experts, for me personally. I'm not looking at cold pitches for daily news as much. I am sometimes, but really what's most compelling to me to make a really interesting feature or a deep dive is if you pitch a story, you pitch a problem, you pitch an issue, and then you say, by the way, here's a couple of people who could speak to that and maybe go into a little bit of detail. But an exclusive insight is much more valuable, like an exclusive insight into an issue, rather than just saying, like, here's a bunch of people that I have who can speak to like the news of the day. That's not helpful to me. And I would just say, like, please, no jargon, no jargon, no jargon. In healthcare, there is so much jargon, and I have to cut through it for readers. Like, our readers are no BS readers, and they're not going to be jargon is unacceptable. And so it's just going to simplify my life so much. If your press release, your pitch, like no jargon, please. Let's all just call it what it is.
Or before you jump in, what is your definition of jargon? And I'm asking that because every industry has language that it uses that to the outside world looks like jargon. Can you give an example?
Yeah, I mean anything like let's see, valuable, game-changing, revolutionary,
Oh, oh,
patient-centric. I mean, we know that your product is patient-centric and gonna
right.
revolutionize whatever, you know. Like obviously I'm not talking about acronyms for federal agencies or
And
terms
that's what I
that,
was
you know,
trying to
clinicians
clarify.
would use. Yeah, no, we're talking about words that
Comms
mean nothing.
jargon, PR jargon. Got it.
PR jargon, yeah.
Understood. Got it. Kara, sorry.
I would say I'm very removed from the editorial process. So I'm not a person like in when I started, when we have newsroom meetings and you know when things are going to be published. I have no idea when anything I write is going to be
Oh,
published. And so please don't be like, oh, is it in yet? Is it in yet? It's like, I don't know when your article is going to be published. And I know that's a hard thing to tell a client, but and it also bothers me because it's like you could just Google it. Why are you putting the work on me when I've already done my job? So I'm not going to do your job and my job. And at the end of the day, I realize that we're all just people. I know that PR people are trying to do their job. I'm
right.
trying to do mine. And so as long as we're respectful and kind, and I don't mean that in a let's hold hands way, but as long as we're respectful and kind, it works for me.
One of the things that I have a tendency towards, and Quinn and Kara, you've experienced this, is say a battering ram approach to life. And in the last few years, I've come to realize there's such a fine line between. I've had so many, especially op-ed editors, but also reporters in general, media gatekeepers in general, say, Dustin, thank you for following up. I missed your prior email. That is something I hear, I don't know, once a month at least, and I don't do as much pitching as I used to. Um, but on the flip side, I am somebody who will follow up. I try to use email as the primary platform, but I've learned that one follow-up, I usually do two, but the second one has to respect your inbox, I will not follow up again.
Mhm.
And that way they know that I understand that they're getting 400 emails a day. And to your point, Kara, about when will they be published, I often will say, do we have an idea? Because there was someone in your space, actually, Anastassia, who said the piece was going to be up on a certain timeline, and it wasn't. So I just pinged and said, you said it was going to be up this week. It's Thursday morning. Are we still on track for that? We're just double checking so we can plan on our end. Is that kind of follow up acceptable when we know it's
Yeah.
going to be this week, or is that considered part of that harassment?
No, I think that's totally fair. Once we've worked together, you can follow up with literally whatever you want. I get that, but please don't like follow up on a pitch I haven't responded to more than once.
And for me, I have no idea when things are going to be published. So I really don't know. Checking the website is the best way to know whether something has been published or not.
Cool. This has been great. This has been a lot of fun. And thank you very much for taking time out of your day to be with me. I guess we're going to sign off. And listen, if I don't talk to you all before Christmas, have a great holiday, okay?
Yeah, thanks so much for the chance
Thanks.
to share about our work.
Thanks for having me
It's
on.
fun. Take care,
Happy
folks.
holidays.
Thanks.
Have a
Bye.
good day.